Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Market Action. Dave Russell here. Well, slight technical delays. I'm going to just quickly relaunch my browser or my platform. But market pushing new highs today. And welcome to those people joining us from Vantage Point. Always good to have you. Our idea was Dow Chemical, which is kind of inching higher. You know, we've just seen this general thing of strength in the in the materials and the metals and all that stuff. And, you know, I think Dow is just a clean way to play that. We had some calls in this one. We're looking for the March 57.5 calls. Again, we're just looking for this to work up through time. So I want to mention that. But overall, the market's just very bullish right now. We're just seeing strength all over the place. It's hard to even kind of generalize exactly where it is. Let's take a look on Research Lab. It does a better job than I do. But you know, oil refiners, I'm not even sure why they're up. We saw a build in these inventories that wasn't great in terms of the refined products. But as we just look across here, you know, we're seeing things like, for example, the thing that really stands out to me on the Options House platform, I have this watch list here for the XLY, which is consumer discretionaries. The thing that really stands out to me, if you really want to look at this, this is about consumer discretionaries. So, for example, you know, oil refiners are technically energy, but they often track consumer discretionaries because they track the economy, people driving. Rental companies, those are technically industrials, but they're also kind of a discretionary thing because they do both heavy equipment, you know, like United Rentals is the main one, but they also do like furniture and stuff. But auto part makers, we had papers today in Ford, luxury mattresses, motorhomes, home improvement, you know, specialty retail. So this just continues to be an overall theme that we're seeing here in the consumer discretionary. So I think it's interesting just to mention that. We've also seen a little bit of a shift in our summary that today. We do this morning note breaking down the different areas of strength in the market. We had really mentioned this just the spread, the huge rallies we had in names like Bank of America. Well, now it's happening in Bank of Germany. It's happening in Bank of Switzerland. It's happening in Bank of Spain. All these different banks are kind of following now. This European thing is melting up, happening in Bank of Scotland or whatever this is. Hong Kong. What is this? Hong Kong Singapore Banking Corp. That's right. It's not Scottish. But anyway, all these banks, we basically were saying we thought this was going to happen. Things like Barclays. This is just going global, this melt up in financials. And it's interesting. We have the ECB tomorrow. We have some out-of-the-money calls in Deutsche Bank that are probably nearing a double at this point in time. But overall, there's just a spreading sense of confidence in the economy. And if you look at it, you know, we saw some numbers from Europe that were not terrible. Excuse me. They're not great, but they're also, you know, they're consistent with the ability to see, you know, rates, you know, stop the easing, yield curve steepening, and these banks trading for a discount to book value just going to work higher like we saw in the American banks. I think we're going to see right now there is a broad value buying pattern out here. ArcelorMittal is a good example of that. I've been long this name. It's just, I can't believe how much it's up. But if you look at these stocks that are coming off long-term lows, we're seeing it all over the place. And I think we're going to see, if it's not, let's not do healthcare, but think of the stocks that have been bad for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Those are the names that are coming back. The metals. You know, the first group we actually saw it in was the ocean shipping companies. These are kind of crazy stocks that I don't think you want to mess with, but they did tell us something. So now what we're seeing is, you know, we're seeing all these different, the one I'm interested in is this Brazilian SID. All these different metal companies, U.S. Steel, all these stocks are just exploding higher. The European banks. This is a broader pattern we're seeing. This is value buying. These are companies that were trading at like discounted levels, and all this money is just flocking back into the space. And all these different areas, a lot of value hunting. The ones I would look for now that I think, well, first of all, Blackstone. We had call buying in this one today. They bought, I'm sorry, I'm having a trouble with just so you know, my computer, I had to do a printout of something. And now the S&P just moved a little bit more. I'm wondering if something's happening as we speak. All right, Blackstone. Jan 29 calls were bought in this name. Here's another stock that is just at long-term, it's been basically doing nothing forever here. And when you think about it, private equity, that's a group on Research Lab. Take a look here, today's gainers. Private equity, here it is. When you think about an area like private equity firms, these are going to be companies that are basically highly leveraged baskets of assets. And if you're looking for value, these companies are basically a whole bunch of value packed into a tight little box, just crammed in there. KKR, Blackstone, these are the two biggest ones, but there are other names like Carlyle Group. So this is an area to look. 1 second, folks. Sorry, I continue to fight a cold that's just not quite going away. But anyway, private equity, it fits the same bill as ArcelorMittal. Same thing as Barclays. Same thing as the banks that are coming off the lows. There's just value all over the place that remains in this market, and that's what's driving the gains now. You can see that on Research Lab. Look at today's best movers. If you look on a year-to-date basis, some of the very best ones, solar energy, been really weak. Oil refiners, these have been total laggards on a year-to-date basis. Some of these companies have not, mattress companies, they've done nothing all year, online lenders. So I think it's just kind of interesting. If you look in the last week or so, a lot of these have all kind of, even things like the steel makers now are not even, a few weeks ago on a year-to-date basis, some of these things like steel makers, even then were not that great. But these guys now have gone to such a degree, and the comps have gotten better. Because don't forget, Research Lab, when you have a 12-month chart here and you look at some of these things, the comparison to 12 months ago gets better and better as time goes on. So there was a time here, but in some ways, Research Lab goes back 12 months. It would be, right now, we almost want to be looking back 24, 36 months. The laggards for the last 3, 4, 5 years, that's where the strength is. And the champions of 2012 through 2014, which is biotech and healthcare, continues to just take a beating. It's pretty interesting today because one of the biggest stories of this presidential campaign was that Donald Trump and Paul Ryan don't like each other. But today, they're both ganging up on the healthcare sector. Trump said, basically doing what Hillary did. Drug prices are too high. And then Paul Ryan came out and basically just trashed a whole bunch of things involving Obamacare. It's not clear what it means for the sector, but this healthcare area, it's bad on a macro point of view because it's not cyclical. It's bad on a geopolitical risk view because of the things I just mentioned. And it's bad on a rotational point of view because it was the leadership group in 2013, 14, 12 through 14. That was a healthcare-led rally. Now the rotation is clearly going away from there. So there's just no reason yet to buy healthcare. In the new year, I think we will see some opportunities that, I'm looking, I'll tell you, the names that look good to me, and I'm not saying to buy them now, but I'll tell you, Acadia is an awesome stock. Let's go back to 21. If it goes to 21, let's set a price alert right now on the Options House platform, clicking on the little gear. These are the things we want to do. We want to be anticipating stuff before it happens because I think in this case, I'm going to set my price alert at 22 just so I don't miss it. But I think, we could see things like this. This could just puke lower into the end of the year. And I think if you like healthcare names, it's going to make sense to be looking for those. Halozyme, this one's been a really good name too. The moving averages are lining up bullishly, but the sector's terrible. So, these are some that have been good, and I think we're going to want to be waiting for because I think we're going to get Celgene, for example. This stock could go back closer to 100. Same thing. So I have my list here today on the summary sheet, and I want to mention that because I do believe, I believe in planning, because one of the ways that you have a good trade in 3 or 4 weeks is planning for it now. And in my opinion right now, we're going to see some of these in the healthcare space down the road, but not yet. Another one, all right, Microsoft. The big cap NASDAQ, we have been wary of it. But, we had actually kind of been saying Microsoft coming off the 50-day moving average at a certain point in time, it's going to do well. And now it has. Today we saw some paper, the February 60 calls. This is, I think, our first alert today. And now in Microsoft, I'm saying, when this happened, the stock was right at 60. And I said, you know what, do the 62.5, which is what I did. And those had more gamma. So I just wanted to mention that. these were cheaper calls, and they had more gamma, and you could just kind of maximize the move through. In my opinion, the thing about those Feb calls is that earnings are due in January, which means you're not going to have much time decay, at least for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I think at this point you can just pick up that leverage. Really good options liquidity in this name. So I think this is where your sweet spot is. You're in Microsoft. We like it when the stock is a little bit away from the strike price, and then it punches through that strike. That's when you get your gamma really cranking in your favor. So with a stock like this, I think that's the way to look. Chart is extremely bullish. It clearly broke out, formed this basing pattern above the, I don't know if it was a 52-week high or an all-time high, because this stock was basically back. Yeah, I mean, this is just back down to the levels from, the dot-com era. And, this one, I think these guys are just executing very well. I think Microsoft and Netflix remain the two best of these major names in terms of technology. I still think Amazon and Google and Facebook are just kind of weak. Although at this point, when you consider how strong the overall market is, I think that you could easily see some catch up in some of these other names. So Microsoft to me remains my favorite, but I also think now when you consider the strength of this market, even some of these names like Google, or Alphabet, this could easily work its way back up over 800, and the options are not very expensive. All right, let's take a look at some of your questions. Is Freeport going to catch the other members of the group? I'm not sure what's going on with Freeport today. I said recently I thought it's going to break out. I'm not sure what's going on with it, though. Will we see more upside in low? Yeah, I think so. We recently had call buying at Home Depot, which has probably been working out. I think that, this whole area, I think, is going to just work its way back up the range. I'm not sure Lowe's and Home Depot are the best companies, but consumer discretionaries are strong, and the housing theme continues to kind of come together. If we look today, mortgage applications were down, interest rates have gone up, but people are buying homes still. I mean, the thing is, the applications to buy a home, I think at this point the housing market can only get better. You have so many people who've been waiting. You have interest rates going up, which is anything is going to incentivize people to buy now and not later. And then you also have the demographic trend, and then you have the economic cycle where people right now, if you're like 30 years old and you've had a good job for 3 or 4 years and you've saved some money, it's going to be an area where I think, people are going to remain active in that. So I think it's going to accelerate in terms of housing. I think it's another area that the depression, that we've seen in the banks and in the steels, I think housing could be exactly the same thing that we're seeing in Blackstone. There are things here that are trading like the end of the world, or at least houses don't trade, but the valuation and the sentiment is that negative, and the reality is not. So, I think that I'm a big believer in following sentiment, but I think an important part of following sentiment is recognizing that sentiment can be wrong, and fundamentals over the long run will usually work. And the thing is now it doesn't mean you buy something when you go against sentiment, but what you want to do is you want to understand when sentiment and fundamentals diverge, and then you want to catch them as the sentiment makes that shift toward fundamentals. So like right now, for example, I'm sure you could argue that Amgen is too cheap fundamentally, but it doesn't matter because at this point the sentiment is not turning toward fundamentals. There will be a point in time when Amgen is too cheap and people stop hating healthcare, and that will be the time to buy these biotechs, which is not now. But I think it's important to just kind of think about that. There are stocks where you have real fundamentals, and I think that's the important way to think. You want to be thinking from a top-down point of view of what is the sentiment and what is the sentiment going to become. And right now I think the sentiment from housing is going to go from lukewarm, I hate houses, I'll never own a house, to, well, maybe I should buy a house, to, oh my God, I have to buy a house. And I think the way to play that in a lot of ways is Lowe's, it's Home Depot. Another one, Masco, today. December 30 calls were sold. Let's take a look on the Options House platform. We can see this call buying here in these December calls. Now, they sold these calls, but they bought the 32s in February, rolling those higher. Masco makes cabinets, they make paint and some faucets and stuff. They're a big supplier to Home Depot. The last earnings were weak, but this is one of the great names in the space. Take a look over on Research Lab as well, and we can see that this has actually been, this area, if you want to look, this is going to be a place to be looking. Now, again, you guys joining us from Advantage Point, I do want to mention something. If you look here on Research Lab, this is some new functionality we've introduced on Research Lab. If you go to a group, if we want to find what's a good, I want to buy a housing-related name, but I don't know how to do it. And, some of these companies have terrible options liquidity. They barely ever trade. If you go to a group on Research Lab and you go to member performance, it brings up this ranking table. So recently, our awesome developer, Joe, added a column, which is the average option volume. So this will allow you to see, this is going to be the average option volume for the member companies in the last 30 days. So this is going to allow you to find where's the activity. About a week ago, I was looking at the chemical stocks, and I noticed that some of these companies, like, these crazy companies that, like Chemours or Westlake, these were going higher. But I also noted, and I own Westlake, by the way, and I own Tronox. But these are companies that these things don't trade a lot. So I'm like, how are we going to trade this with options? Go to the group on Research Lab, click on the member performance, and then click on the average option volume. And what do you see? Dow Chemical and LyondellBasell, Huntsman, these are the guys that have the options volume. This is where you want to be looking. So when you want to be looking for names, because one of the most frustrating things when you trade options is you get all excited about a company. Oh, I think Ashland's an awesome company. And then you go to Ashland and you look at the options chain. And it's like, you go to it, and it's like a ghost town. Look at this. Look here. Look at this. Front month at the money calls trade 21 contracts. I mean, what on earth is that? So the thing is you might find a company and fall in love with it. Then you go to the options chain, and there's nothing for you. So you go to Research Lab first, find the names that are active, then go to your chain and start looking for them. All right, let's take a look at more of your questions. Weyerhaeuser, Mikey just did this one. I think he did an alert on our Option Monster Premium service. In Weyerhaeuser, the call buying today was at the Jan 34 line. This is another company. This is also kind of like a Blackstone. You're looking at a company that's been at a long-term low, and it's just breaking to the upside here. This is a company that does, lumber. It's technically a real estate investment trust, but I mean it's basically a lumber company. They organize it as a REIT because it owns farmland or timberland. But this is a lumber company, a housing supplier. You can also take a look over here on this recent group we were just looking at the home construction suppliers. I'm pretty sure we have Weyerhaeuser on this list. Actually, I need to add it to the list. Sorry about that. But they do lumber. All right, take a look at some of the unusual names today. Banco Bradesco. This is a Brazilian bank. They are buying the June $10 calls in this name. This will take time, but it's got time. It's June after all. Look at the $8 level here, 200-day moving average. I'm not a massive fan of some of these emerging market stocks right now, but I think when you consider how much time this has and you look at the global strength in financials, this stock I think could work its way back to the upside. When you consider how much time we have in this, I think that this makes sense to look for a move higher. It was pretty significant size, over 30,000 contracts right there in that BBD. Ford Motor, back on Friday it was great. We're on market action, and then suddenly this thing triggers an alert. It pulled back at the time. I'll show you where it was. Take a look here on the Options House platform with the 10-day chart. Right here, we had set an alert for the price when it went back to 21.20, and it went down there. And then, I told people about it on the webinar, and I immediately bought calls in it myself. My calls are doing pretty well. Today we're seeing more paper. Now it's the end of year, the quarterly $13 calls. The 30th of December is the expiration on that. This is also a company that had good sales. The F-150 truck is doing well, and that's where these companies are making their money. I mean, these SUVs and pickup trucks, that's where the action is for Ford in terms of the margins. And this is a 10-day chart, but I mean, to me, this is a company that has, look, it's a consumer discretionary. It's been, again, I mean, it's like Blackstone. It's like U.S. Steel. You're looking at an economy right now that is doing pretty well. It's probably going to get better. People are going to buy things like pickup trucks, and you're looking at a stock that's basically trading like it's, the Great Depression. And I think this is another one where this company has got a lot of potential upside. And I think when you look at, people are going to be looking for the next Bank of America. They're looking for the stock that was trading at 14 that was too cheap. And I think we have that template. Here's another one. I'm not bullish on Disney, but I think that the worst news is priced in. We had recently been saying, there's potential for strategic stuff in this name, and now other people have been saying it too. I think that's something else that now there's going to be some hopes in this. This stock has a bearish gap from back in May. I think this name could easily run up to 105, so I think this is another one on our list. All right, CHRW. This is a trucking stock, and I got to say, transports have just been completely bullish in every way imaginable. And here's a stock that's just about to break out, or pretty much pushing a 52-week high. This one, it could, I think, move higher and just kind of run. This is not a heavily traded stock. So you're looking at a name that I think you're going to see real kind of, people buying it for the fundamentals. And this is, a 10-year chart. So I think you can see that this level here, around 76, has been a key level for a long time. This is one I think that it might even make sense, be thinking about, just go out a little bit in time, like the May 80 calls, Again, it's one of those things where you don't want to overthink it. I think you just kind of, is a bullish stock. Transports are strong. If it breaks out to a 52-week high, it's probably going to start triggering alerts. People who don't have Research Lab are going to start saying, oh my God, this stock's at a 52-week high. Now, with Research Lab, we can find that because we just go to technical events. We say, show me a stock that is basically, within 2% of a 52-week high, for example. So we say, distance from 52-week high, right here, on the technical events, and then we just say less than 2, right? And then we're going to find all those stocks that are within 2% of a 52-week high. We're also going to see, looking on this list, this automatically excludes companies that trade fewer than 1,000 contracts a day. So once again, we're going to find those companies that are particularly active. And then you can also say, show me the ones that haven't moved much yet. And we're going to find all these companies that are near the 52-week highs. But, these are down a little bit in the last 2 weeks. So I want to just, remind folks that you can find these things that are starting to line up. Let's take a look at some more questions. Why is tech down, TECK? I don't know. Tech and, copper miners are just a little bit weak today for some reason. I think copper itself is actually kind of weak today. So I don't know why. I think it's just people are buying the steel stocks today. Excuse me. Wait a second. A small error. Oh, sorry. Thank you for letting me know that I missed the Dow ticker there. All right. Should we take a profit or roll the Credit Suisse December 15 calls? No, you should roll those. You should roll them out in time. Look, the ECB is tomorrow. Let's not forget that. It's awesome to be, wow, I'm up a ton. But, you got to take, you have to adjust those positions. So now I'd say if you're in something like the December 15 calls with a name like this, it would make sense. If you're on the platform, you can roll that. I would think right now, it's like we were saying back in the names like Bank of America and SunTrust several months ago. Now is what you want to do is you want to go out in time, lower delta. So I would say something like, the March, look for March calls that are like kind of comparable. You could sell these and you could buy the 17.5s. Your delta is going to get cut in half. But at the same time, you're going to have way more time, which means that if you have 3-4 weeks of weakness, you're going to be protected. Because you have a lot less delta, and a stock like this could go back to like 14.90 or something, and those calls will get just smoked. So I think you want to roll out in time, higher in price. JetBlue is breaking out. It wants to go to 24. Yeah, I've been surprised. The airlines, I think, the transports. I should have just read my own note because every day, when I look here, we have this groups and sectors analysis. Every day, it's just transports. Take a look on Research Lab at the key indexes group. I mean, it's just transports. Look in the last 6 months, transports have been leading, 12-month basis. But all this momentum has been in the last 3 months. Look in the last 3 months. Transports up 13%, the NASDAQ flat. Money has just left the NASDAQ and gone to the railroads and the airlines. And I should have stuck more with it just because of the overall strength in the industry group of transports. CLF. I mean, right now this is just a parabolic feeding frenzy in the steel makers. This is a steel-related name. So I think this name, I'm pretty sure we identified a level on this stock that it has not yet reached. Let's take a look over in the Research Lab, QA Bank, and the Market Action QA Bank. I'm pretty sure we laid out a level on this one. We said we did not. This one we don't have yet. But I think it's gonna. I think you have the peak from here from 2014. So I think this name could, I think it'll go over 11 before it's done, if not all the way up to like 13 here. So I think CLF is not done. What do I think of Macy's? I think it's pretty bullish. It's had 2 gap up on good news here. I think it's going to continue higher. Speaking of retailers, last night I was doing some scans and I came up with TJX. For a while, some of these retailers, I was a little bit wary of them, but, good economy, cyclical consumer discretionaries, good earnings, everything about this stock is good. It's done nothing for like 2 years now or something. And, look at this. This village has been in this tight range, but this stock right here, it rallied back up off these lows, and now it's pulling back and holding this level right around 77 from, mid-September. I think TJX here could have a nice run into year-end. Take a look on the Options House, chain, because I do think if you look at like these Jan calls, some of these 82 halves, this could, I think, easily be the place to look because you're going to get a lot of leverage in those. If the stock moves higher. So I think this stock could just have like into year end. It could just go running right back up, toward those highs, and those calls could work nicely. So I think a name like TJX also makes sense for some calls. Do I think FedEx will continue to run higher? Well, I think based on what I said on the transports, yes. By the way, look at this chart of FedEx. Look at what it's doing right here. Okay? Breaks out. And remember, at the time, that was a 52-week high on FedEx, right? It broke out to a new high. The 50-day moving average caught up. It made a higher low on the right side of the pattern, right here. Okay? Now look at Microsoft. Microsoft is doing the exact same thing that FedEx did about 2 months ago, or whatever that was. Higher low, 52-week high, holds a 50-day, and then it makes a higher low on the right side of the pattern. So FedEx, that's what it did at the beginning of November. That's what Microsoft is doing now. So, okay. Starbucks is going to 60. So today they announced they're going to open 12,000 stores in the next 5 years. Yeah, I think so. I said I think this name, I'm pretty sure we actually have a range on this one here on Starbucks. We basically said Starbucks is in a range up to 63. So I think Starbucks here, at this point in time, strong economy, strong market, consumer discretionary, major blue chip name like this. It's been dead forever. It's not like U.S. Steel, but it kind of is. It's been dead forever, and we're not, in a bad economy. This is a great company that has been dead for a while, and I think people are coming back to it. So I think this name can move its way back up toward those highs over 60, and it's got great options liquidity. So someone is long the December 221 calls and SPY. Should I hold the remainder into tomorrow? I think yes. December 221s. Well, I'll tell you, I'm not sure exactly. I don't trade SPY calls. I basically trade the equivalent of the futures. I just trade the thing directionally. So those calls, I mean, I think you're probably, you could probably take a lot of money off the table, and there's no reason to stay that deep in the money. Because I think what's going to happen is if it moves high, I think you'd want to roll it regardless. Tomorrow we have the ECB, which I think you want to roll, to be honest. Because, I mean, I would not be surprised if this is the top for the day at least. Just, I'm not saying to be bearish, but we could easily fall 15 points from here in the S&P and then explode to the upside. And the thing is, you could lock in a lot of profits here. Maybe not 15 points. Maybe, well, yeah. See, that's a funny thing. When the market moves this much, the volatility just goes down. And what feels like a big move, you realize, wow, that was only 8 points, So let me just see here. I haven't looked at the SPY. I've been trading the small caps, actually. Wow, look at this. So your strategy note, this is what we were saying. We said this morning we want to buy SPY on a pullback. We said to get long SPY for no more than 221.5 on the SPY. And today's low on the SPY was basically about 12 cents below that. So our strategy note today, again, managed to more or less find a decent entry. I think, I don't think it's going to pull back very much, even with the ECB. But when you have this kind of run up, I often think that I think near term it might just kind of stall and peter out. And then what the market likes to do when it's running like this is it likes to fall early and then run up. Like if you look here, look at Tuesday morning, It fell a little bit, then it cranked. Even this morning, it eased a little lower, then it cranked higher. So I think at this point, I think you should roll up. That way you're going to continue to have potential. So I would, I'm not sure exactly right now because I'm not looking at the SPY chain, but I think if you're in the December 221 calls and you've done well, it just makes sense to roll them. You can probably keep a very similar net delta with way less capital at risk. What do I think about BAK? This is a Brazilian chemical company, Braskem. Doesn't trade a lot of options. We did cite it a while back when it pulled back to the 50-day, and it's done well since then. The problem with this stock is, you got to trade. I mean, it's not a name for options. So I think this name, you probably let it pull back to like 18 or something. I don't think there's a whole lot else. Sienna. I haven't looked at this name in a while. It looks modestly bullish. I'm not sure how the earnings have been on it. I'll tell you the name that I like. This is probably going to inch higher, but I'm not sure it has the best risk reward. Might drop a little bit more, but, I think it probably is going to work hard. The name that's grabbing my attention today is OCLR. This one came up on one of our scanners for a bullish pullback. It's another fiber optic sort of name. It's on our list here as well. We cited the pullback here in our summary sheet. And like I said, we do have a list here of our healthcare names that are on the kind of, it's like there might be an after Christmas sale, like when you go to the store after Christmas, maybe like, in that week of the year between Christmas and New Year when it's just kind of quiet, some of these healthcare names might be good to pick up in the bargain bin. So I want to mention that. All right, another one that I think is interesting is 21st Century Fox. Again, these stocks are consumer discretionaries. Disney is a consumer discretionary. The media stocks are consumer discretionaries. 21st Century Fox. The chart's a little more bullish than Disney, but again, I mean, here you're looking at a company that could run its way back up to 31 and then die. I'm not a big fan of the media companies overall, but again, you're looking at cyclical stocks that do well in a good economy. DEL, I'll tell you, I don't know this name. The timber stock. Well, obviously, it's pretty strong, but look, it only trades 100,000 shares a day. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me why it's bullish, but I don't know at this point what to do about it. Yeah, I'm not sure to do with it at this point in time. Um, I mean, I think it's probably going to keep running. Near term, I'm not sure, but I think it probably will continue higher. Another one of these inflationary materials names, housing-related names. Yesterday you were positive on Rio, and today it's flying. Does it run more? Yeah, all these metals I think are just going to sprint higher into year end. This has a bullish ascending triangle that it's breaking today. I mean, this is like a textbook chart formation. I'm long BHP, so of course I chose the weaker of the two, being probably just chose the one that's a little bit cleaner. But anyway, this absolutely. I think the name, the level in Rio. Let's see. See, a stock like this, I mean, it's breaking this level, but it can go. I mean, just because it's at a resistance level, I think. See, here's the thing. I think you got to look at this stock like this. You know, I think that there's often not going to be just. There's only going to be one resistance level, and I think that that was it at 40, the one that it broke here. See, this level that we're breaking today actually goes all the way back. I should draw this line all the way back to the middle of 2013. So I think right now this stock is going to get chased. I think it's got significant upside still. Let's take a look at BHP, which is similar. I think BHP, which I own, it's in a very similar chart pattern. It's also got a bullish ascending triangle. And I think if you miss Rio, this could be one to look at next because BHP will probably do something similar. It's also got a bullish ascending triangle. So I think BHP is another one to look at. This is probably one you could do something like the January 40 calls and pick up a lot of gamma. I like some of these calls, like the 39s or the 40s in BHP, because I think BHP is probably the one to look at next. Netflix. So for you Vantage Point folks, we do have a bullish call spread open in Netflix. I think this is one you just hold the spread. I think it'll end the year at like 130, which is the top of the spread. I think this is one you just want to hold it. No reason to roll or do anything like that yet. This is, I still think, a very strong name. I think Netflix and Microsoft, the big tech names, are the best, along with Applied Materials, which I own, AMAT. These are the really good ones, in my opinion, in the tech space. What do I think about Adtran? This has been a pretty good one. Wow, look at that. I mean, this chart was just a weird, like the weirdest chart. When you look at a stock like this, you're like, why on earth did it do this? Then you look at the weekly chart, and suddenly you see that 500-day moving average, which is the gray line here, coming down. This, I think, is going to accelerate higher. This is a company that's had a lot of good earnings, and it's really done nothing forever because it's had that 500-day, just like, handcuffing it. But it's had a bunch of good reports, and I think this one is going to continue higher. So I like Adtran here. I think you're going to see this stock accelerate. What I would say in a stock like this is you probably want to do something like look to like the May 25 calls, because it's not very liquid, and it just kind of it can just go on a run. And the thing is when a stock's not really liquid, it's frustrating to try to trade it technically. I think those 25 calls with a lot of time, it's a wide bid-ask spread, 35.60, but you could probably bid 50 cents on them and get filled at some point. And, a stock like this can run, and you don't have to do anything. And then as it goes higher, the gamma will just drive your delta, and you'll basically just have leverage accelerating with the stock. And if you're wrong, the capital at risk, you're not going to lose everything right off the bat. I think that's the way to look at a name like Adtran. Longer dated out of the money calls. How about the solar stocks? I think that this is just a little bit of First Solar, TAN. I mean, to me, wait a second, FSLR. They're strong today if you look, but I think this is just a relative value thing, and I would not be too hopeful that this is going to continue in the solar names. I don't see much reason to expect that. I think they're just going to squeeze off. Like, again, there's value hunt going on, which in many ways is like people make this comment of it's a dash for trash. People are saying, wow, I missed all these other stocks, but now I'm going to buy like just, junk stocks and they're going to run off the lows. I mean, that is something of a pattern we've seen from time to time, and I think you're getting a little bit of that value hunt in the solar. The thing I would say is when you get these, yeah, this could squeeze a little bit higher. TAN might get near 20, but don't look for much more than that, because what will happen is it'll run up to resistance and it'll die, and then the names that have been strong, the banks will keep running and this will stop. So this is purely a very short-term trade in these solar names, I think. Does MGM still have room to run? I think so. It's at a 52-week high, if not an all-time high. It's a consumer discretionary. We had an Advantage Point trade on this when it was back around this level. Let's actually take a look at exactly what that was. Take a look here on our subscription services. I remember it was pretty sure it was this one on the 16th, MGM. So we said an MGM buy the Jan 29 calls for 90 cents or less. See, those calls have almost doubled. I think you can hold those or roll them higher. There's a reason why we pick some of these calls that are out of the money, just because when you have a bullish name like this, like Adtran or something, the question is, if I think there's really different approaches to options. If you want to trade like SPY, then the calls are awesome. Very short term, close to the money. But when you have a stock that's just like a good name that's going higher, the macro's behind it, it has the momentum, it has the earnings, it has the macro and the economic sentiment, like an MGM did at the time. If you just go out in time, options do you the favor of basically getting rid of of all the craziness and volatility. If it rallies, your leverage increases. If it doesn't, then your losses are managed. So there's different things. There's trading options, and then there's kind of investing with options. And for me, anything more than a week is essentially an investment. That's how I view things. Twitter. Well, this is now another name that's squeezing based on value. I don't really know what to think about this one, but it does have this gap here at 22. And in a funny way, you have a lot of conservatives who support Trump, and and they don't like Twitter because of the way they've done certain things. But Trump is basically now driving Twitter. I mean, there's probably people who are now start opening Twitter accounts. Speaking of Twitter, you guys coming in from Advantage Point, I'm going to start using my Twitter account a little bit more. And so today we actually tweeted out the paper in Microsoft. So I've been kind of following these, and I just want to let you know that I'm going to be using a David J. Russell. That is my Twitter. I'm going to start using it a little bit more, because the thing is, sometimes these things pop up, and it's I want to be able to express something to people, and it's not always going to be immediately available. So I'm starting to use Twitter a little bit more. One of those things I also put up as well today, and I think is interesting, I do want to mention, is that in many ways oil is kind of like a Goldilocks thing here, where oil is good enough to basically keep us out of trouble. Crude in the 40s is going to keep the domestic names active. It's going to drive the transports, the railroads, the rail cars, the steel makers, that sort of thing. But it's also not going to cause craziness and problems. If oil just went spiking too fast, yeah, there might be some, concerns. It would be some, panic and stuff. But you have oil now. Now, in our morning strategy note, we have added a new long-term. Yesterday we added crude oil seems to be forming a triangle between 44 and 52. This range may continue for a while. So I do think there's a pattern that we want to be aware of. And like I said, there was something we shared about a week or two ago. It was a Reuters chart that showed that the break-evens that a lot of these oil producers have, these domestic names, these guys are now healthily making money in the mid-40s. And I think the real story in oil is not oil, it's not energy, it's the steel makers, it's the railroads, it's the railroad suppliers. Look at these companies that are involved in this. And now I would also say that these companies like Trinity Industries, Greenbrier, American Railcar, look at the performance in these railroad suppliers. These have been total Trump stocks. They're domestic energy companies, they're industrials, they're transports, but they have that exposure. A lot of these guys make tanker cars. So if you look here and you drill down, now I just want to point out, these guys are probably going to run into year end, and then that's it. But the thing is, and then they'll maybe continue later next year. But the thing is that oil in this level, the trade is not just to be long oil. The trade is to be looking at the domestic industrial companies that profit from oil. And I do believe that. How about ExxonMobil? I don't know about this stock. It's in something of this kind of bullish pattern. I don't have a good opinion of this one. SunTrust, STI. Wow. I mean, it's not done. I mean, I think 60 is the next logical level on SunTrust. See this level from December of 2007, and then it became resistance in the beginning of 2008. You see 60? That, I think, is a level on SunTrust. See how it was support in late 2007? Yeah, I think it's going to 60. All right, folks, I'm running out of time, so I got to go. Do want to just mention one or two other things. We do also have more call buying in ArcelorMittal, which I own calls in. ArcelorMittal has an open position, which has just been pretty bullish to the upside. We had December calls in this one, the $8 calls, so like 15 cents. Those calls are probably like up, 5-6 times by now. These calls we cited for 15 cents about a week and a half ago. For 15 cents, and I guess that's a 400% profit or something. So I'm long this name as well. I rolled forward in time, and I reduced my delta. I thought I was smart, and you know what? I'm still making money, but you still got to follow the discipline. So anyway, remember to go ahead and follow me on Twitter some more as well, because I'm going to try and put up some ideas there like I did with Microsoft today. All right, we also have the DXJ. This is the hedge thing, DXJ. It's funny because this has been doing very well. The Japanese banks and stuff have been doing very well. It's one of the groups on Research Lab. In this name, we have the 49 calls in January. We're rolled up to the 51s. So they're just looking for this momentum to continue in DXJ. Another thing on DXJ is WisdomTree itself. I think this is WisdomTree's biggest product. So, I mean, it's interesting to look at WETF because this is, a stock that, maybe this one has bottomed out as well. I think it's something to think about. So I want to mention that. It's an ETF operator. Excuse me. There's a bullish call ratio spread in Delta Airlines. They're buying the January 52.5 calls, selling twice as many of the 55s. So this could be someone who's long the stock and they're willing to just exit the position at the higher strike, the 55 line, which is actually not even on the chart right now. So I think right now in this name, we have a level here from, what is this, 52. It's interesting, though, that they're basically using that 52.5 level we have here in January. See, 8,000 and then 16,000. So they bought these, and then they're basically going to be naked, short. Well, they'll be short calls over 55, but if they're long the stock, then that covers the and it's basically a covered call combined with a bullish vertical spread. A few other things here that are interesting is that the Chinese foreign reserves missed estimates. The Australian GDP was bad, and India did not cut interest rates as they were expected to. And one of the reasons is the way interest rates are going up in the U.S., That is now. I think that some of these countries like China, India, I don't think it's going to be good for them because their economies are slowing, and at the same time they have people like Trump yelling about the trade deficits and things. So these guys are going to get squeezed because they cannot cut interest rates easily with interest rates going up in the U.S. They're also, and at the same time, they're having domestic slowing. I think China is not going to be a pretty picture. So it's one of the things I've been kind of identifying. Now those are most of the things I want to talk about. Remember, tomorrow morning, the ECB, that's kind of the big thing. The question is, will they get rid of QE, or how exactly will they discuss that? That's I think the next big thing that we have out there. Well, those are most of the things I wanted to identify. We are just seeing, I think the one big takeaway today from a macro point of view is, one last thing I'll look at. Look on Research Lab at our countries group. Basically after Trump came in, every country except maybe Russia was a laggard. But in the last week, that's changed. In the last week, Europe, Italy, Spain, Germany have been coming back. So I think that that's also something here to be aware of. We're seeing a little bit more confidence. Looking here on the Options House platform, I have a countries group or a countries watch list, and we're seeing today some pretty strong outperformance. The S&P's up like 0.8%, 0.9%, and there's a lot of foreign stocks that are up 2 or 3%. So I think that's something that's interesting just to be aware of here. So hope everyone has a great and profitable end of the trading day. We'll be back tomorrow. You guys from Vantage Point, I'll talk to you next week. Remember, if you want to get my morning strategy note, you can email me at david.russell@optionmonster.com. And David J. Russell is the handle on Twitter. I will be using that a bit more in the future. Take care, folks.